there, everybody. It is Jorie Houlihan, your guide for the dopamine deprived. It is Topic Tuesday, and so I come on here live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time to talk about something ADHD related for a few minutes when I can speak properly. All right, so today we're talking about the ADHD shame spiral. So, have you ever had a week where just like nothing seemed to go the way you had planned? Right? I think everybody's had that to a certain extent. Maybe you fell behind, you dropped the ball, missed a meeting, maybe ghosted a task or two, right? And instead of just brushing it off, the shame spiral kicks in. And then you're convinced that you have ruined everything and you're a mess and that you're never going to get your act together and on and on and on. Okay. That is the ADHD shame spiral. And it can be vicious. It definitely can be vicious. So today we're going to talk about why it happens and how it can keep us stuck and what we can do to step out of it without the usual beating up of ourselves, because we are our own worst bullies most of the time. So why does this happen? Why do shame spirals happen when you have ADHD? So the first thing is when you have chronic sort of quote unquote failures, they add up, right? So when you have just years of things like missed deadlines, forgotten details, uh, uh, messy follow through or forgotten follow through on something, it just builds up, right? And so you just have this backlog of all these examples of when you have quote unquote failed. And so they add up. We also tend to internalize the wrong story. So instead of saying, my brain works differently, we instead say, oh, I'm reliable, I'm lazy, I'm worthless, I can't do anything right. We immediately fall into those ants, as they say, which is automatic negative thoughts. We also have the all or nothing thing going on. So we can have 1 week that's been tough, right? One week, and we will be convinced that it will make the whole month, the whole year, or sometimes even our whole lives like ruined. And it will not. And in fact, when we can catch this early enough, we can even possibly prevent it from taking over a whole day. So we'll get to that in a second. And then, of course, we have our emotional intensity and RSD, right? Rejection sensitive dysphoria. So small stumbles for us can feel huge. And it can trigger old wounds about, letting people down and all of that. So with ADHD, shame doesn't just knock on the door. It just sort of moves in and, redecorates. And we want to keep them from, moving in. All right. What can this look like for you? A shame spiral can look like beating yourself up over what didn't get done. It is avoiding the very task that you need to get caught up on. It can be comparing yourself to others. Boy, you got to watch out for the comparison stuff here. We are so inclined to compare ourselves to others. And so often it is an apples to oranges comparison, because you're usually comparing yourself to people who are neurotypical and your brain doesn't work that same way, right? So when we compare ourselves to others who seem like they're on top of it, of course, we're not going to feel great about ourselves if we're having a bad week. And it can be also look like just thinking, oh, I'm never going to get it together. I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm never going to get my act together, etc. Right? Again, those ants, just automatic. So how can you pause the spiral? Pausing it is a huge step in the right direction. But what does that look like? First thing you can do is just name it out loud. I'm in a shame spiral. And you'll see this is kind of a trend with a lot of the things I talk about. When we name it, it tends to automatically create some distance. It suddenly doesn't make it quite as personal, right? And when we name it out loud, it interrupts the cycle. And we want to interrupt this. It's not going to immediately make all the horrible feelings go away. It's just something to pause things for a second and create a little distance between you and that feeling. Um, sorry, I need to look at my notes sometimes. Uh, you want to shift to self compassion, which is not easy for us. Ask yourself something along the lines of, would I talk to a friend like this? I'm guessing you would not. Okay. Like I said, we are our own worst bullies. So when you can show yourself a little love and say, you know what? I had a bad week. It happens. It's going to be okay. Right? Think about what you would say to a friend if they were in this position, and then say that to yourself. We are so worried that we are gaslighting ourselves that we are more willing to say the horrible thing to ourselves than to just show ourselves some compassion. Everybody needs compassion. We're all human. We all screw up sometimes, right? Everybody does. But because we have that emotional intensity and because we have RSD, we just have to really work at being able to kind of recenter ourselves when it happens. Um, and also reset the bar a little bit. Like when we are in this place, right? And you've managed to pause it, instead of doing the all or nothing thinking thing of, I'm going to fix all of this now, just take one tiny step, right? Because the it can be doing one email, it could be unloading one dish from the dishwasher, it could be, go take a shower just to reset yourself a little bit. It could be just go and take a quick walk. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to reset my entire life, which is what we normally do. And we will fail at that because you are not going to do that, right? That's hard for anybody. And most of the time, we don't need to reset our entire life. We just need to acknowledge, okay, something went on here. And you know how I talk about that lens of curiosity? This is where it really, really can be helpful. All right. We're going to talk. Let me get to that in a minute, though. Um, you also want to look for neutral evidence of what actually happened, right? So remind yourself, one rough week does not define me. Our track record is bigger than this one stretch of time. Okay. Most of the time, you do things really well. But we really take it personally when we don't. And so earlier I said sometimes we can even stop it from being a bad day, let alone a bad week or bad month. Think about a time where, like, you messed up. Maybe you missed a meeting. And instead of showing yourself this compassion and showing yourself that neutral track record that's like, I make every meeting. This was one time I didn't, right? So instead of giving ourselves that compassion and doing that, we immediately just let it take over the whole day. It's 5 minutes to say, okay, you know what? I'm not letting this 5 minutes, I'm not letting this one thing ruin the rest of my day. I messed up. I got to figure out what happened there. And this is where that lens of curiosity comes in. Sorry, I know I'm kind of talking in a circle here, but it's important. The lens of curiosity is something that I think is incredibly important because we tend to be very judgmental of ourselves. And judgment just brings more judgment. It doesn't give you any solutions. It doesn't create any, it doesn't solve anything. But when you look at it through the lens of curiosity, which again is sort of like you saying it out loud, right? Acknowledging it, you can then say, okay, what happened here? Like, how did I miss this appointment? What could I do differently moving forward so I can just make sure that doesn't happen again? Right? There's no judgment with that. Something just happened. Maybe an alert didn't go off, or maybe you didn't realize that the volume was off on your phone for an alert reminder. Maybe there's a setting you can change for that. But just being like, okay, let's just make sure this doesn't happen again, right? Or minimize how often it happens. But what can I do? What happened here? When you look at it like that, I mean, even just the tone in your voice, right? As opposed to, "Ugh, what happened? You messed up." Just be like, okay, something happened here. What happened here? Very different feel, correct? That's the voice I want you to have with yourself, that compassionate voice. Because again, we all mess up. It's just part of life. Okay, you are not immune to it. No one is immune to it, but we tend to hold ourselves to a higher standard. I think in part because we're so worried that people will think we are incompetent. You're not incompetent just because you missed one meeting or because you didn't fold the laundry one day or whatever it is. Okay? I really need you to like hear that. Okay? All right. So, in conclusion, you didn't ruin everything. You really didn't. You had a rough week. It happens. And it it happens especially for people with ADHD, right? We just have certain challenges that can lend itself to things happening. But when the shame that you feel, it wants you to feel isolated. All right? That shame voice that you hear, that voice is saying, "Oh, don't tell anybody. You don't want to tell anybody this. Then they're going to think you're incompetent. Then they're going to think you're not reliable. Don't talk to anybody about this." It wants to isolate you. It's like an abusive spouse, right? The ones that like try to like isolate you from your friends and your family. That's what shame does. It is an abusive spouse to a certain extent. And so I want you, the next time you hear that voice, I also suggest giving that voice a name, like mine's Debbie Downer, but you can give it any name you want. You can be like, you know what? Shut up, Debbie. I'm not listening to you now. It feels silly in the moment, but I'm telling you, there is something about it that is weirdly effective. Okay. It's sort of like body doubling. I can't explain it. I just know it works. All right. So the next time you hear yourself thinking, I've ruined everything, I want you to find a way to pause. I want you to find a way to reset. Okay. Be like, okay, this is hard for me right now. This is hard for me right now. I'm going to go take a quick walk. And then I'm going to say, okay, what can I do to make sure this doesn't happen again? There you go. You just want to do it gently. Okay. You are competent. You're not broken. I know I say that a lot, but a lot of people with ADHD truly feel broken. You're not. Okay. You just need to figure out how your brain works. And this is a big component of ADHD, emotional dysregulation. It's much bigger than most people really realize. And so when you can start to see what your patterns are with this, because you'll start to see which types of quote unquote failures really trigger the emotional dysregulation. And then and then when it gets even easier, then though, to create a toolbox for that so that you can handle these different situations in a better way because now you understand better what you're dealing with. Okay. So I want to know from you, what is one thought that you would have that you could tell yourself to help you reset if you're having a bad week this week? Like, what is one thing you would tell yourself that you know would help you with that? And and I also want, if you're willing to share, I want you to say, these are the types of things that I know tend to trigger my emotional dysregulation, right? I can say one of mine is when I'm overstimulated, if I'm in a crowd for too long, right? And I can't hear anything other, and I'm losing my voice because I'm talking loud because I can't hear anything and whatever, like that can sometimes be what kicks in for me. And then I get really just like with people. And it's just because I'm overstimulated. And so if that happens and I recognize it, I will then say, you know what, I'm gonna go to the bathroom for a little bit. And I just will go somewhere where it's quieter so I can allow myself to reset. And that's what I want you guys to find for yourself. What are the things that can help you reset? And I also want you to find that kind voice. Remember, what would you say to a friend? Okay, that's it. All right, so hopefully this will be helpful for you. So next week will be the next topic Tuesday. Our Q&A this month is actually going to be moved to Thursday instead of tomorrow, only because, and I don't know why schools do this, but they wait a long time to tell us about things. And so the open house at my kids' school is tonight, and I didn't really think my kids really wanted me to go, but my youngest does. It's her first year there and all that. So I'm going to go to that. And so we will have the live Q&A on Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. That is for paid subscribers. So if you are curious about it, you can always check it out and pay for 1 month, see if you like it. All right, that's it. So if you have any questions or if you have a topic that you would like me to cover, let me know. And also, just a reminder that the ADHD and podcast is launching October 14th, and I'm very excited about it. So I'm interviewing people and I'm recording these podcasts, and I'm really excited and I'm really nervous, but I think it's going to be fun. Anyway, so stay tuned for more information on that. All right, have a great week.